Welcome back to segment 3. Archbishop, that women's conference should be a great gift.
Oh, it was sold out last year. I'm just amazed. And of course, the rally with the representatives had a lot of enthusiasm. So I have every reason to think we're going to have just as much success, maybe even a little more this year.
There certainly is vitality across the diocese.
There really is.
Now, one place of vitality that causes some confusion in the church is this: every time we have a political election, and it's that season of year, particularly presidential seasons, and you know, the issues of candidates and voting and issues get all combined together, and Catholics end up with questions. Now, the U.S. bishops have given us a great assistance by providing the document, Forming Consciences for the Faithful Citizenship. I thought we could talk about that document first, and then talk about how do we deal with these.
Let's do that, Brian. Let me give a context a little bit, because I think there may be people who say the church should stay out and not say anything, and they also would say, listen, church should tell me exactly what I should do when I go into the booth. And of course, I need to go on, and I'll mention 3 points. One, when Pope Francis came to the United States last September, he gave at the White House and then again at the joint meeting of Congress, really a very strong message, and his focus was on the common good. In other words, when you're voting, don't just go and say, well, how is this going to influence my life? What's in it for me?
Or who I like.
Or who do I like? Yeah. This is really, I'll make the quote a little later, but it's really trying to uncover the echo of God's voice in our conscience. And that needs to be shaped and formed. The second thing I'll mention is Faithful Citizenship, or as you said, the full title is worth doing, Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship. It says volumes. We need to be faithful. Faithful means not just to be concerned and study the day of the election. No, throughout the year, we need to continue to deepen our understanding of the church's teachings, the priorities, the hierarchy, the areas of what it means to stand for the dignity of other people. And I know we'll talk a little bit about that. And in doing so, I think Faithful Citizenship basically says, be open to study. And the final thing I'll say is sometimes people say when it's the year of a national election that all the coverage seems to be on the national election, but we know that not only nationwide, but also our state elections and our local elections, all levels are very important to be informed in terms of candidates, to make sure that the people we vote for are people who are going to seek the common good, and a common good that is shaped and formed by our church teaching.
Because this is usually our teaching segment, help us again, these themes that come out of the document.
Well, one of the best things we can do, Brian, is encourage our people who are viewing this segment to go to the document itself.
Sure.
There's a summary of it, but also I hope we'll have a screen that talks about that. Actually, Pope Francis, I think, said this, but I think we also quoted this in the document itself. Number 17 of the document says this: conscience is the voice of God resounding in the human heart, revealing the truth to us and calling us to do what is good while shunning what is evil. Well, the church talks rightly and has for centuries about what it means to seek the common good. We said that earlier. It means looking at who are the voiceless, the child in the womb, people at the end of their life who are vulnerable. It means looking at the sin of racism. There are certain sins that are intrinsically evil, meaning they're taking and treating people who are innocent in a way that is evil, and we can never justify that. There are also very important areas that we need to be concerned about with regard to issues of poverty, of what it means to welcome people who are immigrants. As you know, 2 decades of my life was in the work of Catholic Charities, and so I think the church rightfully stands for that. So while we do not ever endorse a particular candidate or a particular even platform or party, what we do say is that we have very specific teachings, and there are nuances in the teachings. We can never vote for someone in a way because we want them to promote something that is evil. We need to look when there are not candidates that fully embrace all the church teachings, we need to study very carefully the hierarchy. And I think that is in the document itself very clearly.
You used in your first comment there the echoing. How do we echo that? How does that, what does it look like?
I think the first thing we do is we feel that we try to uncover God's echo in our hearts. And I think the best way to do that time and again has been prayer and study.
Okay, good.
By prayer and study. I think if we only respond, or I should say react, to what the evening news is, or what happens to be in the newspaper, if there isn't that quiet time in which we begin to study the documents that the bishops have given us, and I think they're very solid documents, to begin to reflect, and really not only by ourselves, but sometimes with other people. Our Kentucky Catholic Conference has sessions. Now, these sessions will actually be after the election, but I think
Catholics at the Capitol?
Yeah, it's actually, this year, the Catholics at the Capitol are regional.
Okay, good.
So they come right into the regions. But it's important because I think sometimes people make the mistake. They think, well, the time to form my conscience is a minute and a half before I'm going to vote.
Yeah.
No, the time for us to come to understand and appreciate issues and appreciate the Church's teachings is at a time in which we can study. So one of the things that I would encourage also is, even after the election, for people to get involved in the regional meetings of Catholics at the Capitol, which every other year goes regionally. So they'll be right within our own archdiocese.
You know, philosophers suggest that politics should be some sort of high-level discourse that helps deal with governance of the people. But boy, newspaper, television, radio these days feel so negative. And some people say, I'm not going to vote. Help us with that.
Well, you know, I think you're right. As you well know, I often, when I'm asked to say something, will talk about the 4 C's of courage, compassion, civility, and I'm forgetting the 4th one. I shouldn't have said 4. But the last one that I wanted to mention was actually the one of civility. Because I think in many, many ways, I think that's lost in discourse. I think people attack one another today. And it's very, very important for us not to be attackers, if you would, but rather to use our mind. Faith and reason are not mutually exclusive. And so we want to call people to be a very good, very good mind. I would say to the person who says, well, I don't think I'm going to want to vote. Well, first of all, I think it is a decision that even in our documents it should not be said lightly. Yeah. So it's not that someone cannot say that, but I would encourage people, most importantly, to be engaged in the process. If somebody told me that, I'd say, well, what preparation have you done? What have you studied? What exactly have you already done to be able to prepare yourself for that decision?
Your 4th C, because I remember it, is calm.
Oh, you know what? It was the one that I added at the end. It was. I remember people talking about serenity, and I thought that's especially needed today.
That's what I was thinking.
Is let's stay calm and let's look at what is really good for the common good.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Thank you for remembering that.
Well, you know, I thought that's what we need. The others may be more helpful, but calm is in our heart and our mind, because this is stressful times for us. And I'm really grateful, and I hope most Catholics are, for the tool that the USCCB provides us. And I join you in encouraging our viewers and all Catholics to read that material and prepare themselves for this election, but not just for this election, for being a good citizen.
I think so, and for seeking always the common good.
Thanks for being with us for this segment as the whole show of October, and we'll be back next month with further opportunities to have conversations with Archbishop Kurtz.